Laura Smith back from SLP, Mommy of Apraxia. I'm excited today for this podcast I have with our Canadian speech language pathologist. The Instagram community is fun because we all get to share ideas and information, but the countries are different in terms of services and things like that. So I wanted to bring you this special panel of fun, awesome SLPs, all rooted in therapy using the principles of motor learning. And I'm going to have them introduce themselves. So Brooke, we're going to start with you.
Hi, I'm Brooke Ray, like Ray of Sunshine, not Rhea. And I am based just outside of Toronto in Ontario, Canada. I have a private practice that is restricted to motor speech disorders in the pediatric population. And I'm on Instagram a little bit, but not as much as I'd like to be, but it's a busy center. So.
Well, and you also are involved in Apraxia, the nonprofit Apraxia Kids Canada, yeah?
Yeah, so we're working to get Apraxia Kids Canada off the ground. We're getting really close. I feel like I've been saying that now for 3 years. I cannot get over the red tape that is involved with this, but you know what? It's going to be worth it. It's going to be so worth it. So
thank you. You're amazing. Anna.
My name is Anna Dalzell. I am a pediatric speech language pathologist. I've been practicing for 13 years, and I work primarily with preschoolers, so ages 3 to 5 with severe speech and language delays. And I love working with kids with apraxia of speech. This used to be an area that terrified me, and now it's an area that I absolutely love. So thanks for having me.
That's so funny because I just know you as Anna DSLP. So
yeah,
I've never heard you say your last name and I didn't actually know it.
Oh, there you go.
That's awesome. Thank you. And Tally.
Hi, I'm Tally Kellerstein. I have a private practice in Toronto. I've been a speech pathologist since 2005 and cannot calculate right now how many years that is. I started my career in a center that specialized in motor speech disorders, and we saw really primarily kids with almost exclusively kids with motor speech. And I worked there for 10 years and then switched fully to private. And so now I'm doing full-time private at the Speak Boutique, my practice, and exclusively speech sound disorders with sort of a mix across the board from apraxia to Artic.
Awesome.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, I'm excited to have you all. So before I really wanted this to talk about some, like I said, differences between Canada and the US. But before I start, I just want you guys to tell our readers a little bit listeners, wherever you're following this, a little bit about your therapy style, how you treat childhood apraxia speech, and what activities you find are your favorite and that you gravitate to. So this time I'll start at the bottom and start with Tally.
Okay, so my office kind of replicates what I do in therapy. So I'm just going to give you a little tour as we go.
Ooh,
so
we get a sneak peek.
That's a mini version of my bookshelf. Those are the ones that I use most commonly. So almost every one of my sessions centers around a picture book, and I can go into later why that is. And that big white closet behind me is only games.
Oh my God. That's awesome.
So every one of my sessions, I start the target sounds drive the books that I'm using. The book then drives the theme, and the theme chooses the game, and that's pretty much how my engine runs. So yeah, that's pretty much my therapy in a nutshell. And then you see my book that I've written as well to help other clinicians who are looking to
yes. Show it up real quick. I forgot. I want you guys to show, your creativity.
So this is Party Animals, and it's a collection of poems. Each one is really heavy on a specific phoneme. And I wanted it to be a tool that people could use. If you're using auditory bombardment, then it's an easy thing to pull out for your auditory bombardment. If you're looking for something to do a lot of block practice, you can do a lot of block practice with. If you're looking for something to do more varied practice, you would pair it with a game and then vary out your practice that way. So I just wanted something that people working in speech sound disorders could use. And every poem tells a little story. So it's very language rich, which is very much my philosophy, my MO in working with CAS.
Yeah, and if you follow Tally on Instagram, definitely you get a good sense that that's how it's set up. I feel like you're always very themed. You have games that you match with books. It's very impressive, to be honest with you. I'm not in my office right now, but when I feel like I was very much not themed. I definitely do books and games and all that too, but I like how you have this like nice little themed package to stuff. And honestly, I got good ideas from you. It's like, ooh, I want a book
Yay.
that works on this. Let me go to Tally's Instagram page. So
Great.
thank you. Okay, so Anna, yeah, in my head, I'm like Anna D SLP. So I'm gonna try and control myself
So funny.
and
because
just call you Anna.
Perfect. My kids are like, they know your name is just Anna, right? It's not Anna
No,
DSLP. But now my
no.
son will be like, hey, Anna DSLP. Like when we're out, I'm like, stop. This isn't very stop. Okay. So I actually feel like we are very similar. So I often start, or not often, I always start my sessions with a book, whether it's with motor speech or not, and kind of build on a theme as well. And I try to choose themes that are very practical and functional to the students that I'm working with. My philosophy is that our goals and our targets should be functional and meaningful to the child. So lots of things around daily routines, whether that's like food or bath time, those types of things. And trying to keep it really child-led, play-based, and really keeping the child engaged the entire time is my goal. So we can get lots and lots of practice.
What's your primary population?
Preschool, 3 to 5.
Yeah, that's what I thought. So you got those little bitties.
They're my favorite. Yeah. So actually
Yeah.
it's funny because I have the same thing. So my office just got painted, so it's not fully put together, but here's my bookshelf. It's like the same,
The same one.
and I have my themed bins that I can grab and my same white bookshelf. I don't know if it's the same one from IKEA that you have. Yeah. I'm not going to flip it around because my office is a mess on that side, but same, it's all full of things and it all kind of goes together. And so you were saying that you don't use themes as much, and that's totally okay. I think every therapist has their style. And the reason that I just like using themes is I find you can get that vocabulary over and over and over.
Right,
again.
right.
But that just worked. And I kind of just started collecting things and they all started just gravitating to themes. It wasn't like a conscious thing that started. So
Yes. And if you will go follow Anna DSLP on Instagram, you will see like in her stories all the time. I feel like you're always showcasing some bin or some toy or something fun.
Awesome.
Yeah, I love it.
I'm trying to make one thing work for all the things. So I love apraxia of speech and I love motor speech disorders, but I also work with kids with other areas of need. So I don't have one specific thing for one specific area. I really like to be able to make anything work for any goal. So less
Love
prep
it.
time.
Yeah, right. Love it.
Yeah.
All right. And Brooke, tell us about your practice.
Well, I don't use books as much as you ladies. It's a goal. I am like uber functional. I work mostly with the 2 to 5s. And so it's all about what's sort of leading them. So a lot of my sessions will look like there's zero prep, which is not actually the case. There's all that prep that goes on, which speech paths know. But it's all about what the kids are into that day, what's going to work. This is where I've been doing my telepractice, but my floor is a disaster, which I know you all, and I will not even begin to show it to you. But the book I go to the most, this is my like go-to SLP Bible. I love this book in terms of quick, like what's the sound, what's the shape we're working on, what do we need to do? Do you know this book?
I've never seen that. No.
Oh my gosh.
Seen that, Laura?
No. Wow.
Mine is so like marked up and like bent and oh my gosh.
Oh no,
I love
I'm
this
gonna have
book.
to add
This
the
is-
card after this.
Sorry. Yeah, you are worth every penny. But it's a really quick way to, I don't have to sit here and think of words that fit the shape or fit the what I'm trying to do that day. So definitely that. And like all of us have spun to virtual in the last year and have not really enjoyed it, but I'm making it work. And play-based for sure. What else can you do with little people? But that whole idea of just got to be functional. Homework shouldn't feel like homework, hopefully, until the older kids certainly. And that's kind of what I do.
Awesome. So I have a question for you now, just related. Brooke, I know you have training. You came out here to the States to get it. How were you guys trained? How did you find do you feel like training for apraxia was good in graduate programs in Canada, or did you have to get postgraduate education as well? Anyone want to field it?
I felt like we learned a lot about the theory, and I could come out and tell you all the theory and all the pathways and all the things, but keeping it functional for SLPs in school.
Yeah.
I felt like that piece was missing, but I went to school so long ago, but I know that they have work to improve improve that in the program from the feedback. So I can't comment on what that's like now, but I know they have more case studies. They have people actually coming in and things like that for students. So I think it's improving. But for me, no, it was all like self-taught and lots of reading and
Oh, wow.
and courses and things. But yeah, my goal is to go to the boot camp one day. But
oh, yay!
So we all have different people in stages. Brooke is leading part of the
I'm an
leadership of
instructor
boot
this
camp.
year.
I'm in the boot camp, and Anna, it's in the future for you.
I want to
No,
be.
I
I want
Talia
to
didn't know that about you. Oh,
I'm in
that's
boot
so
camp this year.
exciting.
Yeah,
no, they're
Canadian
working
boot camp. So
Yay!
Together, yeah.
So for you guys that don't know what we talk about boot camp, Brooke and I were in the same cohort, but it's when we did it, it was, sponsored by Cassiana, which is now Apraxia Kids. And so Brooke traveled all the way down here to the United States to attend it in Pittsburgh. I know, as far away as we are.
You traveled further than I did.
I
to go
did.
to boot camp.
I was like, your plane trip is only this many hours, not fair.
I drove to boot camp.
Oh, you drove. That's
I
right.
drove.
Yeah, but so anyways, that's what we're referring to. And Apraxia Kids puts one on every other year. And now we have now we have a Canadian boot camp that you are the director
we're
of,
doing it
right?
together. Well, I wouldn't use that word, but yeah, we're doing it combined this year because we're going to do it virtually.
Oh,
Because
gotcha.
it was supposed to be last summer, so we're doing it now and we're combining it, which is super fun and means that the instructor panel is going to be amazing. I'm like super jealous of this class. And then but we're hoping to continue. So the next American one will be 2023, and hopefully Canadian will be the same. So yeah.
Oh, how fun!
Okay. To have a class of.
Yeah, there you go.
So,
Anna, you're in
Anna,
that one.
I'll see you then.
That's so exciting. Well, awesome. Okay. So I wanted to talk a little bit about my inbox because I get a lot of questions and I am so clueless sometimes about how things work in Canada. And I feel like there's a lot of misconceptions anyways within Canada itself. So the first one would be, how are you licensed? So here we always talk about ASHA. You guys really don't have, that's an American, that's an American association. So how are you guys licensed and certified in Canada?
So each of us are licensed provincially because our healthcare is provincial as well. So we have a national organization, but it's more of an organization. It's not a required belonging. You can take the certification exam, but it's not required to practice. So each of us has been licensed in our own region or our own province.
And do you guys, so you got that gives you, here in the States, we would all either have an MA CCC-SLP or we have, an MS CCC-SLP. So are your letters look different depending on the province, correct? Okay.
They look very different. And even in the province, I don't think Tally and I have the same letters behind our name, and we're in the same province because the program we went to was different. We both graduated the same year, but from different programs. So it totally depends on what school you went to, where you practiced, and then your license. However,
we don't have
they
a 3
designate.
Cs.
No, we don't have
about the 3 Cs. We don't have something. So as long as you just put your degree and your SLP, you're good.
And
gotcha.
If
Okay.
you're through the Canadian
association,
get a bracket C, right?
If you're certified with the national,
but that's
okay. Okay.
Yeah. So,
all right, because do you guys have assistants? Do you have SLPAs in Canada?
Yeah, SLPAs and CDAs.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so parents would, the reason I'm asking is because parents want to make sure that they have someone who's certified. They want to make sure that they're credentialed, and I can't advise them at all in that way.
If we have SLP after our name, you would have to be certified. They could look through the provincial register to look up their speech pathologist name just to make sure it's legit. And that's the way there isn't an equivalent of CCC after our names to find out.
Okay, it's just that if you say SLP, you have to be certified.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, makes sense. Okay, awesome. And then in terms of, I was telling you guys this before we started. I just had a comment the other day that said in Ontario they're not allowed to diagnose, and so I want you guys to talk a little bit about that.
So Tally and I can talk to that. In Ontario, it's just considered a protected act to communicate a diagnosis, and that's the actual wording. So a regulated health professional in Ontario can't communicate a diagnosis. So I think that where the confusion comes from is that if we're talking about apraxia as a qualitative term for something that we see in a session, or see during sessions, or see during an assessment or a consultation or an evaluation, then we can use that as a qualitative description the same way we would use DLD, or the same way we would say
Stuttering.
a moderate stutter. Right, exactly. We just can't come out and say, because we don't know the medical reason behind, or we don't know the reasoning, we can't say that part of it. So Telly, you had a really good analogy where you said it was like, oh, just before we started. Now I've forgotten what it was.
I forgot what I was saying.
I really liked your wording. But it's comes down to essentially semantics. So we can still say, oh yeah, go ahead.
You mean where I said that really it's a discussion about the debate is really more about the term diagnosis than it is about the term apraxia.
Yeah.
Okay, right.
And if you watch like Edie Strand and Jenny Bjorum recently posted on it about apraxia being a label for speech rather than a medical diagnosis, that's really where this distinction comes from. That diagnosis in Ontario is reserved for medical doctors for like an underlying physiological condition, and versus the impact of that condition that we see on speech. And apraxia is more than as a descriptive label, which we're allowed to use as a descriptive label. We just can't say child is diagnosed with apraxia by SLP.
Gotcha.
And so people say like, it's in the DSM, it is a diagnosis. I'm like, yes, it is a diagnosis. We can't give the diagnosis, but we can say qualitatively your child has
characteristics of.
And so that's how we work around it. And so then if a family really needs a formal diagnosis for purposes of schooling, which is probably the number one reason I find, because you don't need a diagnosis to access treatment in Ontario. And so if they need it for school, then they would go to their physician or a pediatrician, and hopefully with the support of a speech path would make an appropriate diagnosis.
Wow, this is so interesting because, on my social media, I will always say according to ASHA, the best person to diagnose, and Jenny Bjorn will say this too, childhood apraxia speech is a speech language pathologist with advanced training, clinical expertise in apraxia. And then a fair amount of people will be like, well, so-and-so but I don't know where they are in the world. Like there's lots of people that follow. So in that case, no, like they need a medical professional in Canada. If I'm hearing this correctly,
Ontario.
Oh, just in Ontario to get that.
Yeah.
I like that.
Okay.
Alberta.
And
Yeah.
Ontario and PEI, which is another one of our small provinces, but in PEI, same thing. They need a physician to do the diagnosis.
But in Alberta, where you are, oh, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, my understanding is literally that is the only, we are the only place in the world that's the case. That is my understanding from some research that I've had done. So
we can diagnose here. Yeah.
Okay, good. So that's helpful for me to know. Awesome. Okay, great. All right. So then we were just talking about coding too. So how does codes vary across provinces, you guys were saying? So how so?
In Ontario, there are no codes.
There just are no codes.
There are no codes.
That's a diagnosis, because a code technically is attached to a diagnosis. Right. Okay, so but not true probably then everywhere else. That was basically the same question, essentially.
Right. So in Alberta, how it works, at least where I am, I can't speak to the whole province, but how it works is I do an assessment, I give a diagnosis, I pass it along to the ed consultant, who is a registered psychologist, and then they deal with the coding. So I don't give the code, like I don't submit the code. They are the ones that kind of know the inner workings of that, but the diagnosis that they receive by the therapists, OT as well, and physio would guide the code. But there's also codes for other things that obviously speech pathologists don't diagnose, right? So
yeah.
So I have a question for you guys who have codes. What if you don't know day one when you meet the child what the diagnosis is? Sometimes, you do diagnostic therapy for a while and it's only a while before you figure out do you feel pressured? Like you
I get an hour to do a diagnosis.
Wow.
So I can have a working diagnosis, but if you write suspected CAS or whatever it might be, like you don't get as much funding. So it's I won't diagnose unless I'm certain, and then I will just put speech sound disorder. So the difference is, at least it was, I don't know about now because it's all changed. You would get more visits if you're a code 44 versus a 47, which is a language delay.
Code 44 is a speech disorder?
44 is a medical condition. So apraxia, autism, Down syndrome, those would be a 44. And then they get different types of visits and different amounts versus a 47. So they still get service. It just might be like more parent visits versus fewer parent visits and more school visits or no parent visits. Like I honestly can't keep up because it's constantly changing. But
where do artic and phonology fall in?
I don't see kids with artic and phonology. So in order to
okay.
see, you have to have below the second percentile on the self.
Okay.
Or moderate, or not the self, but like a language test.
Yeah.
Or moderate phono, moderate language. But now it's all changed. Again, it's changed. So we have program unit funding here. It's called PUF, and that supports our severe population. Those are the kids that I see. So the artic and phonology kids would get seen through the health unit, like the mild kids. So again, with health and education being different, they go to the health unit. But now last year, I don't know what's happening. The government now took away all the funding, and kids if you're not a severe language delay, you don't get speech.
Oh, wow.
Essentially, and only up to grade 2. And it varies school district to school district because it used to be ran by the province, and now the province gave control to the school boards, and the school boards, everyone's doing something different. So I can't speak to everywhere because it even varies within the 2 school boards in my tiny little town.
Wow.
Looks like.
Yeah, so let's talk about that, because a lot of people will comment too that the services are so poor in Canada that they only get a couple sessions a year, which if you have apraxia speech, it's to me, that's like, I don't want to say it's pointless. It's not, but I mean, let's get real.
So this is how it works, at least where I am. They see me, but they have an aide. So it might be a 2-on-1 or 1-on-1 aide, not an SLPA.
Okay.
An educational assistant, or I think in the States, paraprofessional.
Yeah, paraprofessionals, yes.
So they have a paraprofessional. So a huge component of my job is to train the paraprofessional
I see.
and to train the parent of how to do the sessions in between, and the teacher. So there's a lot of consulting with them. Yeah.
I see. And then at any time people people do private pay for services there to supplement. So when I get these comments on my social media, people are really referring to free services through. Okay.
Yeah, I'm glad you clarified, because the private services are not necessarily poor. Just our publicly funded services actually have many amazing speech pathologists. Just the funding for them sadly has dwindled. At least over my career, I've seen a huge disintegration in publicly funded services here. But we, it's not the clinicians, and there's ample great private services for people who are able to access that financially.
Yeah. A lot of people have benefits here, right? Yeah. I don't know how it is in the States, but so they might have they might be able to cover. I have some families who can get 20 sessions a year.
Okay.
Yeah. Just quite a bit covered, or they get different funding. Do you guys have FSCD in Ontario?
No.
So there's family supports. So I see students right now, the kids I see once or twice a week all year. So a different funding unit. So parents only pay like a little bit of it, but the government is, kind of supplementing it, or not supplementing, but funding for a lot of it. But again, it's for the kids who are
very severe.
So what would you recommend? How do you answer families when they write you a message and says, how do I get more services covered, funded?
Go see your MPP.
I say squeaky wheel gets the service.
Yeah.
As a parent, and if I have a kid, like my son needs occupational therapy, and I call the school till they give me what I want. I think too, educators and all therapists, we all have the child's best interest at heart, and we're all trying to do the best we can with what we have, right? I don't think that there's anybody out there that wants to rip kids off of service. And I think if they, families are really motivated to get therapy, and they can always do a little bit more, right? So
I
often in general, my message to parents here is that you, if possible, would consider the private sector as your primary and your public as your secondary. And obviously that's only feasible for people who are privileged enough for that to be feasible. There's going to be a segment of the population that cannot have private as their primary service. But the publicly funded services here, they exist. There's early abilities for our kids roughly under 3. Then there's school-based systems. Our school boards in Toronto, I'm not sure if in Guelph it's the same, if this is an Ontario thing or a Toronto thing, where we've got a chasm going where we have a language speech pathologist who works for the board, and then we have a separate speech pathologist who does voice fluency and speech sound disorders. That's funded through the health. I can't think of the word now.
The LINs,
health
the
units.
local health integration networks. Yeah. And that's
So we've
true
got-
across Ontario.
Okay, so that's our kind of split personalities of funding here. JK, so junior kindergarten, is a colossal chasm. There is barely any services for junior kindergarten because it used to be covered by early abilities. Then it was passed off to the school board. They don't want to start till SK. So we just have this crucial year that is lost in an earthquake of service. And so it's, I would love to tell parents that there's tons of publicly funded services, go, explore. But, when I started work, children who had moderate to severe speech sound disorders could get services at our center up to 40 sessions in a year. And that program lost all its funding, and there's nothing like that now. This is where we're at.
There's also in Canada tax credits, right? That I don't know if you guys utilize that for your families.
The disability tax credit?
For some families.
Yeah, so that's federal. That's across Canada.
Okay.
So families can apply for the disability tax credit with support of their physician or of their speech path. And so it's just some paperwork to fill out, and it speaks specifically about quality of life, quality of access to activities of daily life based off speech communication skills. So it's something that a lot of our kids with apraxia do qualify for. You don't need a diagnosis to apply for it. So that is beneficial for some families. Some families have trouble finding somebody who can complete it for them, which is also unfortunate. So but good for families to know that it is.
And also the criteria to fit into that is very narrow. So
it is very narrow.
You have to, I think something like you have to be hard to understand over 90% of the time by a familiar listener. So if mom reports she understands a child most of the time, that child doesn't qualify for this.
So there's it's tricky, but it's hard to get kids the service they need. Especially like, I don't know if you ladies find the same, but I find there's more in place for the severe kids, but those mild, moderate kids. And as they get older, like once you turn 5, it's tricky in Alberta.
Once you turn 4 here.
That's what you're saying. So it is really like, I think a lot of it, I've reached out to a lot of physicians in my area talking about, like, don't say wait and see, because you're waiting for, there's nothing there. Waiting, but then when they're 5, when they go to kindergarten, there's no support. So
that's exactly
it's better to get assessed and stuff. And especially now, like the program unit funding, which I alluded to, used to be for ages 3 to the end of kindergarten, and now they've cut off a year. So you really only have 3 and 4. So if you don't often get kids until they're 4 or 5. So like I've been really trying to work with the doctors here specifically in my town to really be on top of that.
That's a big point. That's a really good point, is that whole wait and see. Just, it can't work because our funding is not set up in Canada.
We don't have time.
Even in general, wait and see is just, I really can't stand that advice even here. Because, in the rare instance, let's say in most scenarios, maybe we're just dealing with a language delay, which is great and no harm done to get early intervention. And here, early intervention in most states is free. So why you wouldn't utilize it, is like crazy. Why a doctor would say, well, just wait and see, is crazy, because we do have the funding for these kids.
Right.
And we just talked about not using the word crazy, and now it's in my head. That is wild. And so, but so I was doing some stuff with Carrie Ebert, and she likes to say, let's just see. And I love that, because let's just see. Because in the rare case that it is apraxia, it's also, you're the most neuroplastic. They have the most neuroplasticity when their brains are little, to make to make a good progress with. So.
And also
across the board. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Sorry. I was just saying, and they're home. Like, it gets a lot harder when your kids get older, and then they're in full time and extracurriculars, and you're trying to find, like, 15 minutes can be really hard to find. And I know, like, incorporating it obviously into daily routines is important, but when your child's not only home for 2 waking hours a day by school and everything else, like it is that younger age makes it a little bit easier.
Yeah, totally. So do you feel like parents, in our early intervention agencies here, I hate to say this, but I don't feel like SLPs have the training. They think that some of them even think they know what apraxia is, but probably don't, based on my experiences now going through the educational system. And I do think, like you said, it's getting better. Like, same here. I do feel like there's definitely more information getting pushed out to students. However, families, I have a whole practice, and I hate to say this, but it's built on people who were burned. So they come see me because they know I specialize in apraxia, and it's because they suspected it as a parent, and someone else, the SLP either, didn't entertain that idea, never brought it up to them, or I just have so many stories. How do you feel like it is there? Do you feel like any family, where they go to get an assessment is probably getting a really good differential diagnosis of speech language disorders, including apraxia and motor speech?
I think it's hard here because we have such a time pressure. You don't have 25 visits to make a diagnosis a lot of the time.
Right,
So
to do diagnostic therapy.
I'm not blaming the SLPs at all.
Uh-huh.
And I'm not going to say I've never made a mistake before in the past. Sometimes I cringe when I think about things.
Sure. Oh yeah, me too, of course.
But I do think that there are SLPs, like I've gotten some, they're like, this child has apraxia, and I'm like, they don't even have a speech sound delay. And then I'm like, they're 5% intelligible. I'm like, am I missing something?
So it's similar there.
It is similar, but again, I think you can't say like it's one agency or one thing. It's definitely therapist, right?
Yeah.
And depending on that, but yeah.
Yeah, which is why I want. Go ahead.
Overdiagnosed and underdiagnosed.
Yep. That's the same here. I tell everyone that too.
Yeah.
I get so many comments every time I post that, which is like, how could this be the case? I'm like, oh, how much time do you have? Like, so easily.
It's just incorrectly diagnosed. It's just one way or the other.
Right, exactly. And it all just stems from, this is why I wanted to do these podcasts in May, because if you're listening to this, May 14th is Apraxia Awareness Day. And we kind of just took over the whole month now and say that the month of May is Apraxia Awareness. But technically, it started with Apraxia Awareness Day on the 14th. And so awareness to me is important because I want therapists or SLPs. I really like to drive home the message that we can't know everything from birth to geriatrics in every single speech and language and swallowing and voice disorder that people can have with expertise and specialty. Like, it cannot happen. Like, it is not physically possible, in my opinion. So, people tend to kind of specialize, like you all have, and I have. So you kind of broke off and said, this is where I'm going to really have my area of focus and do the reading and do the research and get more training in. So, and so I don't know, what do you guys think about that with Canada too? Are you guys certified through birth to geriatrics in every speech and language disorder? Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, that's exactly. And it's impossible. So most people do try and find, a niche, or at least a couple of niches or something, or a population. I mean, there's definitely speech paths who work in both still, but I think, they have a good idea of what they can and can't handle. I think we're definitely in Ontario getting better at, who's good at what, and let's find the right people. And I've worked really hard specifically in terms of having our graduates, graduate with more CAS knowledge and just more knowledge that you are not expected to know everything. It's a 2-year program in most cases. Good grief, right?
Yeah, exactly.
A very broad field. But I also think urban versus rural makes a big difference. In a city like Toronto, you can find speech pathologists who will exclusively work in whatever area you pick, because there are enough of us that we really can silo ourselves. But if you go more rural, people don't necessarily have that luxury.
Sure,
they just can't in order to serve their community. I know at the beginning you said you're not a fan of teletherapy. I have completely turned. I love it. And one of the things I really love about it is that I can reach families further afield in Ontario within my area of interest. So I can really see people who I can't drive to in a day.
Yeah.
but
Me
but
too. That's
they can
funny. I have kids
access.
on farms now where I live in the city too. I live in Denver and it's very metropolitan. So to have a kid, sitting at the table with his chicken has been quite a new experience with me.
That's so fun. That's
I
so
know.
functional.
I
That
know.
part's awesome.
Like literally I can use all of the farm animals now and it's functional. He has a cow, the cow gives him milk, he has a chicken, the chicken gives him eggs. Like he puts it in a carton and a basket. Like it's awesome.
That's so fun.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. So what do you guys want to say as some final words, just in terms of anything, really? Anything you want to add?
I think that if you don't know, then try to find someone. Like, I think that is really good advice, especially now with teletherapy is opening so many doors for people. It wouldn't have even crossed my mind a year ago. So fluency isn't something that I'm comfortable with. So if someone came with me, that I wouldn't even occur to me to try to find somebody 500 kilometers away from me that could maybe see therapy. I would look I live in a town of 10,000 people. There's 3 of us. So, I think that it's okay to not know. And I know when I finished school, I felt like, I don't know if you felt this. I felt like I'm supposed to know everything. I
totally felt that way.
How do you not know this? Now I'm like, well, I haven't thought about that in 15 years. So I actually feel more comfortable saying I don't know now.
Yeah, exactly.
Which is almost like counterintuitive. You would think
I actually agree.
So that would be my advice to anyone.
Love it.
I think for me, my big or 2 things that I really hold on to a lot. One, if the problem is speech, work on speech. Jenny just posted on this recently, and I couldn't nod any stronger. If the problem is speech, work on speech. I had talked about before why I like to use books, and I use books because I'm always then working on speech in a context, and I'm trying to take words that have the shape or sounds that I need and embed them into a story. So it's not just a random word like, cone, but it's going to be cone in the context of eating an ice cream cone, or a cone that is a cone-shaped hat, and that's not my hat, or whatever, so that it has meaning for the child. And so those are kind of my 2 things: work on speech, make it meaningful.
Love it.
All you need to know.
Perfect. Brooke.
I'm gonna do a plug for Apraxia Kids in Canada, because I'm gonna do it because I'm such boot camp changed my life. I met Laura. I met so many incredible people. It literally changed the trajectory of my career.
Same.
I cannot say that enough. Nope, that's a good plug for you, Anna. But yeah, apply
Change
for boot camp. But Apraxia Kids is doing such good work, and we're trying so hard to get Apraxia Kids Canada. We're doing a ask for donations this month as part of Apraxia Awareness Day on the 14th. So we are doing a Just Giving fundraiser that we're looking for your support. We're trying to raise the funds right now to actually apply for that charitable status. That's a great question. So the best place to find us is on Facebook. That's our biggest social media at this point in time, presence wise. We don't have a website because that's one of the things we're fundraising for.
Okay.
So we'd really love your support. We'd love if everybody joined us on Facebook. We're
at Apraxia Kids Canada. Okay.
That would be great. We'd love your support. And if you're Canadian and not part of our community, come and join us. It's quite active and awesome. So
that's so great. Thank you, ladies, so much for being here and talking to me about, apraxia awareness, my passion, but in Canada where I don't have, as much knowledge. And follow all these ladies on social media. If you didn't hear, rewind and go back to the beginning. We named them all. So, and happy Apraxia Awareness Day to everybody.
Happy Apraxia Awareness Day. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye, guys.
Bye.